For me to get to race Rockingham is just, I took 6 years off of NASCAR racing. And
why? All right, so we got Kasey Kahne right outside the door waiting in the lobby, and he's been very gracious with his time, but I'm excited to bring him onto the show because the last time he was here was many years ago. A lot's happened since then, and I'm thinking maybe he wasn't he wasn't eager to maybe to share some of the things that I want to ask him about back then. Now he's a little further removed from his Cup career, a little more wiser, a little more comfortable in his life as a family man, and maybe he'll open up a little bit. So we got some things we're going to touch on, but I'm excited to see him. He's always fun to be around, always a great dude, great teammate, and I'm looking forward to the conversation. Let's just get it going. Bring him in here. Kasey Kahne on the Dale Jr. Download. All right, man, here on the Dale Jr. Download with Kasey Kahne, and it's been a minute. You haven't been in here. The last time you were on the show, we were in that little booth.
Yeah, I was wondering.
Things have changed.
Things have changed. Yeah. I was hoping it was still here.
Oh, yeah.
When I got up this morning and was thinking about it, I'm like, man.
Where is it?
Where is it at? But it's got to be right here.
Man, I've been looking forward to this. We have a good friendship, right? I think you trust me. I trust you. We've always gotten along really fine. We didn't ever really hang out during the week. You had things you're doing, I'm doing. We got families and all, kids and all that stuff. But, man, I don't know. If I ever need anything, I could text you, and I felt like you had the same appreciation for our friendship. And I just hadn't talked to you in forever, man. I missed you. And, I always pay attention to what you're doing. Like when you're racing, where you're racing, how often you're racing. I know you have your race teams that are doing things, and I'm trying to keep up with them and how they're having success and all that. Drive by your shop on the way out of Junior Motorsports every day, and always kind of peek in there and see what might be new. And then when I learned that and I teased with you, I saw you at the restaurant talking about racing the Cars Tour or something like that. And because we can do that now, right, at our age.
Yeah.
And then I see you're going to go race a Learn series at Rockingham. And I was so excited about that, because, I don't know, man, we get older and things change. And I, miss the old days or feel nostalgic about the past. And so when something from the past, like something from, years ago, like yourself, gets behind the wheel of anything, I get excited about that. And so I kind of wanted to ask you about that. I wanted to ask you I know you're probably going to tell me you've always had some interest to do it, but you didn't. Now, why you're doing it now?
Yeah, and I appreciate all that, and I feel very similar, with you. When I see you out, if I see you here and there, I don't see you too often, but when I do, or if we, send a text or something because, something happened maybe on TV or wherever it would have been, it's the response is quick and we're always figured out, and and it's cool. I always like that. I always enjoy that. I like when you go and race at Bristol or Florence. I'm like, how'd he do? So I keep track of that, and I think that's kind of similar to what you're saying, and it's a cool respect that I have for you and have for a long time. Also a friendship, but for me to get to race Rockingham is just, I took 6 years off of NASCAR racing. And
why?
Well, I needed to to for myself and just kind of get away and do different things. I put a lot into that for 16 years, and just put everything I had into it. And I feel like at times I got everything out of it that I needed, and at other times it was difficult, just like racing is for most, the ups and downs of racing. But I loved racing in NASCAR, and I'm gonna
interrupt you, so I'm gonna apologize. But how hard was that to make that choice? I know you made the choice. You had a purpose and a reason behind it, but it's not like you don't just stop, right? You got to. How hard was it to wake up and watch that series keep going? I've experienced that, right?
Yeah.
And so how hard was it to wake up and watch them continue on and going down the road without you?
Yeah, and it doesn't slow down. They're doing, it just keeps going. And so that was actually pretty hard for a little while, and it made me not pay attention to NASCAR for a little while. And I tried to really get away from it. It hurt to
pay attention to it.
Yeah, because I felt that I should still be part of that.
Yeah.
I needed to get away because of, personal health and things like that. Like my body it was struggling with those long races.
Why?
It just went down that path of it just went down that path and I couldn't fix it. The longer the seasons went, the harder it got to recover, the longer the week was, feeling terrible. And the quicker, by the end, like I was done in practice. First practice at Darlington, I was sopping wet. If I stood in one area, it was a puddle underneath me halfway through practice.
Wow.
And my body just, I don't know why it went that direction, but they say, you can't control those things, and off of environment and a lot of different scenarios is, your body goes certain directions, but mine went that way with the heat. And so it was tough, and then the series just went on, and it looked good without me. So that was, it was kind of hard for a little while, and I stayed away from it. And as time went, I was like, man, I want to watch this closer and see where it's at and things like that. So, I got more into it, and I've been really into NASCAR for a while now.
Yeah.
But when I saw Rockingham go on the schedule, I was like, man, I love that track. I've always felt like I understood the track pretty well driving, and had decent results there over the years, and just saw an Xfinity race was going to be there, and I really wanted to be part of it. So I started reaching out and figured out how to make that happen. And
who did you call first? How do you get to RCR?
So I got to RCR through Keith Rodden. Who's my engineer.
You called him ever? You eventually called him, or he learned of this?
Yeah. I eventually called him, text him, and Keith was just all in.
I bet.
And obviously had to take it to the right people at RCR, and Richard being one of them. And but yeah, between Brian Johnson and Keith Rodden, we just kind of got the whole deal going, and it took some time. But
who are the partners that are helping?
So the partners, HendrickCars.com. Mm-hmm. Mr. H brought it up to him, and he actually was probably as excited about it as anybody to this point, which I thought was really, I didn't know how he would, what he would think about it. And we were texting during the test. After, like a couple days later, we kind of recapped again, and I just haven't talked to him a lot. I talked to him, whenever HMS does 40 years or some of their deals in May, I'll support that or be part of it. Glad to have the opportunities to join them. Mm-hmm. But other than that, I don't really see him. Right. I don't talk to him, but kind of feel like I race for him right now, like with some of our, just texting again, which was, pretty cool. He's a great guy. And so he supported in a big way, HendrickCars.com, and then Mike Curb and Curb Records.
Yes.
Mike's been with me for 20 years on the sprint car side. Mm-hmm. We've done all of it together as, ownership and have been partners there. So that's been great. And he wanted to, join us on that. And then Caravan Trailers, Scott Boyd with Caravan Trailers, and someone else who's supported the sprint car deal for many years. So yeah, between those three, put it all together, and RCR is, taking it with their third team and ran with it. It's a great group of guys. Like it was a lot of fun to get back in the car and get to feel that, feel a stock car again. And especially at Rockingham, a track that I really enjoy. It's smoother now and grippier with the repave, but it still has all the same characteristics. It's just at a higher speed.
Yeah. I heard that you didn't know they had repaved it till you got there for the test.
So I actually learned like 2 weeks before the test when we were getting the car ready and stuff, and they're like, yeah, it's going to be, much faster. And I'm like, wonder why, And so yeah, when I was going through it all, working on it all, I thought it was the old Rockingham for sure.
Hell yeah.
But the new one's a lot of the similarities is just, back to throttle sooner and way more aggressive.
Yeah. What's the lateral grip like? You tested? Is it pretty comfortable?
Pretty comfortable.
Yeah. What balance issues do you kind of struggle with? Is the car just locked down, kind of turning, trying to get it to turn?
Yeah, I mean, we really were on both sides of it. For a while, we started turning really good and kind of on the freer side, which I didn't want to overstep. So, wanted to be aware of all that. But we were probably the most competitive in the first couple practices when we were that way. Then we got slower as we got tighter, which kind of goes with how I always was racing. The tighter I was, the slower I was compared to the field. And that's where we ended up. But we were really on both sides of it. Felt like we learned a lot. We ran like maybe close to 300 laps in 6 hours or 4 hours, whatever it was. So
that's a lot.
Yeah, I was on track a lot.
Yeah. All right. So was there any surprises or just kind of fit like a glove?
Yeah, the surprises were spotting, like listening to my spotter and like working around a car and listening to the spotter. And when he would talk, just what that meant, like right now, what did that mean? And where was that other car at? And just trying to understand that.
It's like a new spotter.
Yeah. But nothing on him. I would say it's more just something I hadn't done in a long time. Mm-hmm. So just as it, just being really aware of it.
Yeah.
On what was going on, but just littler things like that. The actual driving and the feel of the car, I was surprised as can be. My first down the back stretch through 3 and 4 coming to the green, I was like, wow, that actually felt really good.
Yeah.
And it wasn't too crazy at all. It felt really normal.
That's badass.
Yeah.
So I know you haven't even run that race yet, but 44 years old. How much more is in the tank? Everybody said, "Damn, you don't look like he's aged at all." You got to love those compliments.
Yeah.
When they were watching your social media stuff from the test, but you do appear to be in really good shape. And where are you? I guess you're racing. I know you're running sprint cars, and in my opinion, racing dirt cars is as physical as it gets. So you've gotten yourself in a good place physically, would you say?
Yeah, I'd say physically I'm still in a really good place. I've never really slowed down. I played basketball, baseball growing up through high school and had coaches. But in terms of like the things you struggle with the heat in the cup car, you've moved on from that. Feel pretty good? Yeah, I mean, I don't
confident?
Do anything for a long period of time anymore.
Yeah.
And nothing in heat for a long period of time.
So the sprint cars don't put you through that kind of same thing that a 3.5 hour cup race would?
Not at all, because my body never gets worn down.
Yeah.
So just like in the cup stuff, it wasn't early in the year when those things would go on. It's as the year
later in the year.
The year, and I couldn't recover and catch back up. So then the next week was that much worse.
Do you set your sprint car schedule based off of how comfortable you are in terms of like how often is it a particular schedule or a particular amount of races, or would you run more? Or?
No, I think like 70 races with sprint cars is a good schedule, and that seems like a lot.
Is that how many you're gonna run?
That's what I'm gonna run.
Yeah,
and that's what I ran last year, 72. The year before, I think I was 71. This year I'll be around 70 again. Yeah. But you do that and you come in. It's in and out, like if we had to do 70 NASCAR Cup races.
Oh, God, yeah. No way.
No way.
Yeah.
But in a sprint car, it happens quick, and it's just afternoon, evening, and then on to the next one. And we can do 3 or 4 in a week for 2 weeks straight and then take 2 weeks off. Mm-hmm. So it's easy because of how the schedules are and when the bigger races are and how they kind of clump together.
Yeah.
It's easy to do 70 races in sprint cars and actually still have a lot of weekend, or not a lot, but a few really solid weekends off.
The last time you were here years ago, you talked about getting back into the sprint car, and you you were telling me, you're like, man, it's hard because I need to be doing it every week to get to where I think I can be success-wise. Running one every 3 or 4 months wasn't conducive to success because it's just like anything. You got to be doing it all the time. Well, now you are. Now you're doing it all the time.
Yeah.
You know, are you realizing the performance that you want to achieve? Where are you in terms of being satisfied with how that's going?
I've never really been super satisfied with performance over the years. Yeah. I think there's times when I'm really happy win a race, or whether it's in, you know, whatever I'm racing, there's times when I can be really happy, but satisfied, I was never really that satisfied with performance, and still am not. And I don't know why that is. It's just, but even when good things go on, before it hasn't even hardly been over for very long, and I'm already thinking about what could have been better. Like, that didn't seem good enough, you know, and that's just how my mind's always been. So that hasn't changed. And so, no, I'm not, you know, and I don't feel like my performance in the sprint car is, I think at times it's really, really good. And I don't know why it can't be more often, but it's like a small window. It seems like when I hit that window, like I feel like I can perform and do anything I need to do. But if it's not in that window, it just seems way more difficult than what it used to be. Yeah.
Are you happy? Are you as a race car driver? Are you happy?
So when I get those good feelings of whether it was at Rockingham 2 weeks ago, and you get that feeling, or the main event at Volusia County the first night, you know, 8 days ago or 6 days ago, the first 6 laps, like you have that feeling of this car is capable.
Yeah.
And it just, at that point in time, I'm so happy. And I love driving race cars still. Yeah. When I don't have that stuff, maybe the next night at Volusia County, and it was not doing what I would want it to do at all, and because of that, the car just they don't feel right at all. No, I'm not that happy. Yeah. And so I go, like, and I'm on a roller coaster a lot of times these days because of performance, and so that makes it difficult.
Why do you let that happen? I mean, so listen, all the things that I'm talking about, I'm absolutely guilty of today, right? I do the same thing in my cars, but maybe I'm asking you to be educated, but like, I was watching this clip of this guy on social media, and he's like, he was talking about how baseball players have a hard time reconciling with their careers. There's a lot of players, right, that make it through minor leagues. Some get to the major leagues, but even some Major League Baseball players, like they retire away from the sport, and they go on and they find a job and they find life and they find roles and things that they want to do, being a dad or whatever it may be. But then they end up missing or wanting to do it over, right? And I do that with my own. I'm like, man, I wish I could go back. I wish I could go back and do this over. Right. I think not that I can do it better, it's that I put so much pressure on myself that I didn't enjoy it. I didn't have fun. And I made myself miserable, worried about performing. And now me and you are, we're in this extra credit part. We're doing this racing you're doing now, and the racing that I get to do.
Yeah.
It's like bonus racing. We ain't supposed to get it, right? But we can. We're lucky, right? And still, even though this is this blessing, I still get competitive. I still make myself miserable. There are great moments, like my car driving through the field at Florence in the week, and you having your good day of evolution.
Right.
There are those moments where you're like, yes, this is it. This is why I'm here. But a lot of the time, you're like, fuck, this thing won't turn in the middle, and you're working on it all day long, and you're mid pack on speed, and you're like, I'm better than this. What's going on? And we can't just enjoy the game and love the game. We even though we're getting this little extra bonus racing that not a lot of guys get.
Yeah.
we still can't allow ourselves to just have fun, just love it, every minute of it. Do you feel that way?
I do feel that way. I feel that way often.
Yeah.
And it's a
tough thing.
It's a tough thing. I need to think about that stuff. One thing that's helps me is I take Amy and Anna, and Tanner comes, not all the time, but he comes as much as he can. And we have the motorhome. Anna's just turned 2, Tanner's 9, 3rd grade. And so it's a great, perfect age for traveling. And so we have our destination. We have our spots that we go and have fun, whether it's water parks or amusement parks and campgrounds, different things like that. And so that part of it is really fun. Yeah. And those are kind of set throughout the year. We know when we're going and what we're doing. And so that helps. You do that for 3 days, then go to the next track. And maybe it goes well, maybe it doesn't. But
it doesn't matter as much then because you've been able to kind of weave the family part of it into it. We had a race last year. The first race of the Cars Tour series was at Jacksonville, and it was on the coast of North Carolina, and Amy brought the girls, and they went out to the aquarium. So I didn't feel as much pressure when I looked at the chart and saw myself in 15th or 20th.
Right.
I was like, yeah, whatever. The kids are at this aquarium having a great time.
Everybody's
good. Fine.
Yeah.
But if they're not there and I'm there by myself, I'm like gritting my teeth, right? How mad I am that I'm not in the top 10, It's weird, but so that's a great point, like trying to weave that family into it as often as possible. And they got to want to be there, right? They got to want to go.
Yeah, and they enjoy it. So at this point, it all's working. All 3 of them enjoy it, being at that stuff. As soon as that doesn't work, I'm done racing for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's good when they're with me and they're enjoying it, having fun on their end. I think something else that makes it tough, and this is across the board. When I was younger, whether I was just getting into the Cup, whether I was learning to drive a midget, a sprint car, any of those times, Xfinity, it just happened, and you figured it out quicker. Things were just easier to make sense of. And, I think that's people. It's, listening and learning from the right people and things like that as well. But I feel like that's something that, like, today I'm 44 and I have my ways. And you look at these guys in sprint cars, whether it's younger guys coming in, the fields are tough.
Yeah.
They're strong, right? Like the cars are good. The cars are better today. There's more cars that are at more teams at a higher level. And the drivers are all capable and young. And like in sprint car racing, you have a couple guys that are the best. And it takes them a long time to get to that point. And once they're there, they just they just understand it all, and they're going to be good no matter what race it is all year long. That's just how it works in sprint cars. Yeah. The experience and I think their dedication and things get them to that spot. And there's just a couple. And then everybody else is really damn good.
Yeah.
And so you're going against, you're not going against, I've had a good career and done cool things here and there, but you're going against really good, younger, aggressive kids who want it really bad, so it's not easy by no means.
Yeah.
And I think it's the same in Xfinity trucks. I don't know some of the guys' names in some of those series anymore, but if you start digging into them, they have a lot of laps and they're good.
Yeah.
And they're putting the effort in and working with the right people and putting, doing, whether it's sim, whether it's, the data they're looking at and learning from with the right people, like all that stuff matters. And, they're progressing really quickly because of, their dedication and the effort that they're putting in. So now you're going against that, and they're talented. They're young. They're good. Like young people are talented people.
And risk takers.
We're
more measured.
Very much.
So when you get
for good reason.
Yeah, for sure. When you race at Rockingham, do you have any idea like what a satisfactory result will be? And it doesn't have to be a position on the field. It's like what do you want to accomplish? I will say this. I might help you here. When I ran the one Xfinity race, I, number one, wanted to run all the laps. Because it's like, if I wanted to run every single lap, because that was all I was going to get. And I would be so disappointed if something happened or I didn't finish the race. Like, I didn't even get to finish. So, like, all the laps, finish the race. And, like, man, if I finished in the top 10, I was more than satisfied.
Yeah, I think definitely need to run all the laps. Mm-hmm. But I already think about qualifying and just, how that's going to work, and try to remember the last time I was to qualify one of those cars. 16 was the last time at that type of a track. So those kind of where my head is, my mind, and the feeling that you're going to get taped off, and just trying to go as fast as you can for that one lap or two laps. So it's and I know that the car that I'm driving, the team that's part of it, like, it's a really solid, like, really good team, really good car. So it's going to be, good stuff. I just feel like I'll like to feel really good about my weekend. We'll finish all the laps and then, be in the top 10 for sure. Yeah. Like, I need to be in the top 10. If not, I'll just be like, man, I just didn't do this right or that. And
it's absolutely doable, like, without question. Like, that's a fair expectation, right? Is for you or me to get in there, having not done it, or just doing it once a year, or not doing it in several years, get in there and go out there and finish top 10. The car is good enough, and you're good enough, and I think also our ability to, like, not screw it up, right, in the first 3 quarters of the race. Like, a lot of guys, they're young, they're maybe a little faster, but they also get in over their head a few times, right? And that eliminates a few guys and makes that top 10 more reasonable. But I won't be surprised if you're up there running even in the top 5 at portions of the race.
I think it's going to switch too. The track position is going to be pretty key.
It will. Yeah. I don't think the track's going to open up, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think it'll get wider for sure. It'll get at least halfway up at both ends, but when it does that, everybody's going to be doing the same thing. Yeah. Because that's where it's going to go, and then it's going to come back to the bottom or whatever it may do. But I don't think you're just going to have a really good line here, really good line up here. It's not going to be like that.
No, sure. What does this mean? Are you going to run? Do you want to run more? Do you wait on that to figure out how this goes?
Yeah, I want to just do this one and see how it goes and really enjoy it. Uh-huh. I think I have a little bit of family and friends who want to come back, from Enumclaw, Washington, and come back and do a race. It's been a long time since they were part of it. So, so I want to really have fun with it. Mm-hmm. I'm going to drive my motorhome over there and park in the infield. I think you can do that.
Sure.
Yeah. And I have to talk to the right people, but but that's my plan, is to treat it kind of like I used to. Yeah. And just enjoy the weekend, because it's been a long time since I had one of those. And then after the fact, look at it all and be like, man, I want to do another one, put something else together, or that was perfect.
Right. Yeah. When you look back at your Cup career, and I guess how you decided to retire at the end of 2018, you actually made that announcement before the end of the season, so you knew. Yeah. When you go back and look over that kind of part of your life, is there anything you would have done differently?
I mean, when I look at a lot of those years, there's things I would have done differently. But I wouldn't say, like, at that point, I didn't have a ton of control over some of the things that were going on. And it wasn't my, I would have way rather finished the entire season out, or raced, more seasons in NASCAR, because I just feel like I could have raced much longer, as far as the racing part of me, in my mind, and how bad I enjoyed, or how much I enjoyed driving the cars and racing. But the other stuff had a bigger toll on what was going on. Physical.
Yeah.
And I just needed to be done. So I don't like the way it ended at all.
Yeah.
And that's why I just kind of disappeared for a little while, and because I just didn't want any part of it. That was like the easy way to move on.
This is me not knowing about what was really going on, but I want to ask the question. So you'd raced with Rick. You'd been in this organization that was like top end, all the things you needed.
Yep.
And now you were with a team that had less resources. It was harder to make that car do things that you wanted it to do. How much of the enjoyment, I guess, had you lost? And going to the track knowing, God dang, man, I have to work my guts out to get this thing to do anything. Because you had been in these other cars, right, that would perform. You went to the track expecting this car to perform, and this one that you're in toward the end of your career was not responding that way, right? And it was not, it was just the way it was. Was that?
It was harder, but I was, truthfully, I was actually very okay with it, because I knew that I think you understand where you should be running. Mm-hmm. And if I felt like I should be at that time, I knew where I should be resulting. And if I finished 25th and I thought I should have easily been 18 to 20 that day with what the team brought, because the guys did a really nice job.
Yeah.
And it was a fun team, and I enjoyed driving for LFR.
Yeah.
I was, disappointed, upset. We would work on it. But when we got 18th, and I knew that was like, I did the best job I could. The team did. Like 18th was our spot today. Like I was perfectly fine with it and very happy with it.
Yeah.
But you just have to understand that. Like if I was thinking I could still, like I should be winning races, that wasn't going to be good. But it was pretty easy to understand that.
Was it easy to adjust that expectation?
I don't know if it's ever easy, because you always you want to win and run up front. But I knew but I was okay with it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't so bad.
How often are you at your shop?
I go to the shop pretty often. Like probably if I'm in town, I have a really hard time just being at home unless I'm cleaning up, doing things outside.
Something productive.
Yeah. Otherwise, I need to be at the shop and
hands-on with your dirt stuff.
Yeah, a little bit hands-on with the dirt stuff.
Yeah. Who runs that?
So each crew chief.
Yeah.
Eric, he's been the crew chief for Brad Sweet the last 7 years, and he's basically the team manager, so he's looking over both teams and the crew chief on the 9.
Yeah.
Brad has his car chief has moved up to the crew chief spot this year, which is kind of a new. It's kind of fun and new again, for those guys. Ty's young and excited, and so it's a little different for Brad because his roles changed a little bit, bringing Ty along, but Ty's also put the time in, he's put the effort in, and Eric oversees all that. So between the crew chiefs, they just pretty much handle everything. I mean, I'm part of certain things, but not too much.
Do you remember the first time we met?
First time?
Yeah.
No.
Do you remember coming down to the Western Town?
Yeah, I remember coming down to the Western Town.
Was that so? One of the very first times.
I don't think that was the first.
That might not have been the first time we met at the racetrack.
Yeah, we met at the racetrack.
But that was like the first time we hung out. I think.
So I feel like the first time we hung out was when you lived across the street from DEI.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Where you came over?
Yeah, I was at the house.
Oh, we have a party?
We had a party. We had a party.
I had a party and you showed up. Oh, man. All right. You wandered in.
Yeah.
All right. Do you remember coming over to the Western Town that night?
Yeah, I remember Western Town.
The night you drove your car through the woods? Do you remember that?
Yeah, you were riding shotgun.
I know it.
Yeah.
So, was that the night that Larson was there too? Because
I think Larson was later on. That was probably like a year later or even 2 maybe.
So you came, there's really not much of this story.
I feel like when Larson was there, it was just about kind of the end of the Western Town.
It was.
Of those
years, yeah. We'd slowed way down.
Yep.
One night, we're at my Western Town hanging out, and you came over, and you had this. I don't know what the car was. It was a company car. You remember what kind it was? Mercedes or something?
The Mercedes.
Was it a Mercedes?
Yeah.
And
it was rear wheel drive. The thing was so nice.
Yeah. And I was like, how did we get in the woods with the Mercedes? Was that your idea?
Probably, but I don't know for sure. I don't remember. Yeah. But that was a good time. Car didn't get hurt.
Are you serious?
It did not get hurt.
I had these 4-wheeler trails on this little 70-acre part. That's kind of where the race car graveyard is. And you drove your Mercedes through through the woods like a lot. Like it was a brief trip, but it was.
Yeah.
In my head, I remember like branches just going down the side of this thing, but it wasn't that bad.
No, it wasn't that bad.
Oh my God.
We never talked about it. It'd be nice to like.
We never talked
see
about
what
that.
It looked like the next day.
Yes.
Today.
Yeah.
But I had it for a while after that, and it wasn't scratched up or anything.
Unreal. No. I'd always wondered.
So it was an E55, and at the time, it was a 4-door E55, and it had, all the. I think that was like the Formula One pace car at the time, or close to it. It was a.
And you hot rodded it through the woods.
It was a good car. Yeah, it made it through no problem.
Unreal. I was wondering if you remember that.
I do.
Yeah, that was a fun night.
Yeah.
And then I guess when you brought Larson over, we were just kind of hanging out, shooting pool and stuff, and listening to music. And I remember him coming around and just being like head down, quiet, wouldn't talk to nobody. And that y'all were running around having a good time.
Yeah, it was Kyle, Caitlin, Brad Sweet was with us, Clint Boyer was with us, and we'd been at my house for, I think it must have been like I feel like there was maybe it was the Masters.
Yeah.
And we were at my house all day watching the Masters and everything, and then ended up at your place that night.
Yeah. That was the first time I met Kyle.
Met Kyle, yeah. So the first time we met at Vinny's.
Me and you?
Yeah, you remember Vinny's?
Yes.
So we were over there, and then Josh Snyder and the guys.
All my buddies.
And I just hopped in with you guys, and we went back to your place across from DI. So then we were there. It was like probably a Wednesday night.
Yep.
Whatever night. I think those were Wednesdays.
We did Tuesdays and Wednesdays.
Yeah. And then Josh took me home the next day.
Man, those were the days.
That was a good time.
They were. So I'm kind of jumping all around, but do you remember your feud with Kyle Busch? Have you ever you ever had a legit feud? That one was
not
so
really.
in 2013 you had won Bristol, Pocono, but you had this little brief feud with Kyle. I guess you'd kind of gotten into it with him and gotten the worst end of it, and then I think it's Charlotte. He run you hard or something, and you just lost it. Do you remember that?
Was that in the
I think it's
Xfinity
Xfinity
race?
car. Yes.
Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah, so it'd been coming for a little while, and we would always talk after
Something happened. Yeah.
After each time, and get back on the right page and understand. He would explain why it happened. How whatever it was. But I feel like it. There's 3 or 4 that I remember. And then that one just was kind of the last one, and
you handled business. Have you ever had a driver that you just didn't see eye to eye with?
Not too often.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a few times here and there, Kyle and me and Tony Stewart there. We couldn't really see eye to eye for a minute about something too, and
y'all wrecked at Kansas. He wrecked you at Kansas.
Chicago, yeah.
Yeah, and then the fight in the pits and all that.
Yeah.
And you got out, and they were like, yeah, your mentor. And you're like, I don't know about that. I don't know about him being a mentor these days.
Yeah. And
I just watched that video the other day.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I think it was 2004.
Yeah.
Tony Stewart had a wild 2004. He was in a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
He ended up getting penalized by NASCAR.
Yeah, it was wild. He was the guy who seriously tried to help me get to the cup level.
Yeah.
I remember when I was driving the Great Clips car or the Channel Lock car, he'd be over in a corner once in a while and just start talking on my radio. He'd went down to the pit and found a headset and trying to help me through the corner at Dover or these tracks,
That's
and he helped me a ton. And then as soon as 04 started, and I was like, we were running good right off the start. Rockingham, Vegas, you won Atlanta. I think I ran third to you at Atlanta. Like, we were rolling right off the start, and every time I raced him that year, the first half until Chicago, every time was like difficult, really hard. Like, he was just, I think he was just showing me maybe like that, like he was being tough.
Yeah.
And it was what it was. We just move on, try to pass him, or he passed, whatever it was, and we move on and go to the next one. And then finally that happened at Chicago, and none of us, or I didn't know what was really going on. And next thing you know, the teams are fighting, and Tommy Baldwin was all wound up.
Yeah. Did you and Tony ever have a conversation about it then or even later? I'd
imagine we did, because we've been, fine after that.
Yeah. You see him around?
I haven't seen him around in a while, but I see him at Eldora once in a while. And then I think we probably got into it another time or two later on down the road too. But that's all just kind of part of it. But I'd say Tony and Kyle Busch, maybe the only guys I've really had any small feuds with over the years. Yeah.
The other thing that, and we don't have to talk about this if you don't want to, Kasey, because you've never really publicly talked about it, but head injuries. I think me and you've had some pretty nasty wrecks, and I've been open about mine, but I was wondering if you thought that any of that ever had an effect on you personally.
I think that it definitely has. I learned a lot about it after I left NASCAR. Before that, I didn't really pay attention to it.
Yeah.
And when I crashed my sprint car hard and knocked out, and
you took a little break
and realized,
yeah, didn't you have to step out?
Yeah, I tried to race.
Yeah.
And basically, I was entering the corner. When I thought I was entering the corner at the right time, it was like 100 feet late.
Yeah.
And I had no clue, other than when I would get there, I was in a different spot than I really thought I was in.
Right.
And that's when I realized, I was questioning kind of my head.
So let me ask you this. So that's interesting to me, because there's like when I would have an issue, right? If I'd crash and I was like, I knew, like, yeah, I'm messed up. There's a problem. Now, give me a second here. When we're in our 20s, or when we're young,
yeah,
right? I had concussions and crashes and rang my bell, we'd call it, that I didn't think were a big deal. I wrecked it in 98 at the Xfinity race at Daytona. I flipped and hit my head on the door top and was dizzy and thought it was funny, because in my mind it was gonna go away in a couple days, 1 day, 2 days, whatever.
Yeah. And
no big deal. I didn't think anything about it being a long-term problem, or should I race next weekend? No, it was just fine, And there were other crashes that I was probably messed up and didn't know it. And then when I got older, it was real easy to tell there's a problem. And there are other guys that I know that it's not as obvious to them when there's a problem, right? There's been other racers that I know that have crashed, and they're like, man, I felt fine. I felt totally fine. But then I got out there and this happened, and I was like, oh, that's not right. But I felt fine. I had no clue.
Yeah.
And so, and it sounds like you kind of fell into that boat. Like, you had this crash, you got knocked out, you thought everything was good, and then you drive in the car and you're like, that's not quite what needs to be happening. But otherwise, walking around, talking every day, getting up in the morning, doing your thing, living life, you were oblivious. You had no idea that there was going to be this issue till you put yourself in stress, right, and are in duress,
right,
behind the wheel of a car. Is that kind of?
So I'd say that's partly correct with me. So I just know of 2 concussions. Yeah. One was the one that was in sprint cars after, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, and learned a lot about it since then. And after that, I was like, man, I bet there was other times, and didn't put it together.
Right.
There was another in 13. I crashed at Loudon, New Hampshire, hit the inside wall.
Yeah. You gave this really crazy interview. Do you ever have you
so
watched
I'd seen
that
the
back?
interview, and it's very confused.
Yes. Do you?
And I caught myself after that. I would be driving so I'd be driving from, I lived in Sherrills Ford. I'd be driving into Mooresville and just be happy as can be running 25 miles an hour down the road, 35 miles an hour down the road.
In a 50-mile-an-hour zone or something. Like slow.
And have no clue.
Yeah.
Right. So I caught myself doing things like that after that one.
Yeah.
But I never felt off in the car.
But did you
But
feel?
when I look back, I know I had to have been off in the car.
Sure.
But I didn't feel it. You know, the only things that were off to me was, you know, I'd catch myself doing things that I was surprised I was doing on the roads.
Yeah.
So that means, you know, in the car, I might have been as well.
Yeah.
But always raced through it. Prior to that, I never felt anything different, weird, nothing.
That's so frustrating because that there are people similar to yourself, like that have an issue, but don't recognize it or don't. It's not obvious. And I think, you know, I just watch drivers and I go, man, I wonder if he knows maybe he's not okay, right? And they're just like it was easy, I guess, for me to tell, like I got a problem, man. I need to pay attention to this. But other people, it's just weird how it affects people differently.
And I would say in some situations they might know something's off, and then others they may not at all. Because I feel like I was on both sides of it, and I've looked a lot at, you know, I've looked at it, you know, a lot since I learned more about it. I went to PA, learned a lot about concussions and how to help myself.
Did you go see Mickey?
Mickey.
Yeah.
And it was, he's like the best.
He's the man.
The man.
Isn't
like
he?
the best doctor I've ever. He makes you feel really good and understand what we're looking at.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, wow, that clicks. Like it was really good, you know, visits up there.
Yeah, I think I remember you going up there. So let me ask you this question: when you get past that crash in the sprint car, you take the time, you do the right thing, everything Mickey's telling you to do, right?
Yeah.
You do the homework. You're back at full song, 70 races a year, 3 years in a row. How do you measure? Like, I have girls, you've got kids. How do you measure the risk at this age, right? Like, we're doing this bonus racing, right?
Right.
Like, my idea of playing it safe is pretty silly. I'm like, you know, I just don't need to race every week. I can race, you know, a couple here and there, and that really lowers my odds of getting myself in trouble because I don't need to hit anything, right? And now, could I hit something and be fine? More than likely. But I don't need to test that theory, right? And so that's why I race very minimal. And but you're back at it, hard at it. 70 races a year. You're in the throes, putting yourself at risk like any other racer in the sprint car world.
Yeah.
How do you justify that?
So I talked to Amy about it, you know, and make sure that we're on the same page with it.
That's important.
I think about it probably more than what I should.
Well, that's okay.
But
you're 44 years old.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
You have to.
I have to. And I feel like I want to.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, like every single time, I learned from that last wreck, that wreck where I hit my head hard, that I just need to be more, like really do a much better job of understanding where I'm at and who I'm around.
Yeah.
And, you know, and their tendencies, you know, and just how maybe they race and just just basically use my head more than just going out there and going as hard as you can.
Yeah.
So I look at everything a little differently now.
Did you change anything?
I feel like I'm more aware of the situations I'm in, where I'm at, what I'm trying to accomplish, and do it in that scenario. And
did you think about anything physically with the car, the headrest, the helmet, or what you could be doing differently?
Yeah, I mean, I've John Padalak.
Mm-hmm.
He came by our shop from NASCAR and spent a good bit of time reviewing some wrecks with me, and I learned way more about what the seat belts are going through, what seat belts are going through what, because certain ones really aren't doing a whole lot and other ones are, depending on how you land. So I learned a lot about that and have fixed our cars to be better off of that, and most sprint cars are that way now.
Yeah.
I've also worked on the headrest stuff. John has helped me with that. And
what were some of the things you did? Like if maybe a guy driving got a sprint car, he can pay attention and learn something.
So to me the biggest thing is, or the two biggest things I've done, and I won't race a sprint car without it, is we put a second that the center belt between your legs goes over a steel bar basically, so it can't tear the seat back. That was one thing that I had. It was
tear the seat back.
Yeah, so you, like where the center belt comes up and goes through the seat.
Yep. Usually
that hole's a little further in front. So when you wreck hard upside down, I tore my seat once through there.
Jesus. The aluminum? Is it an aluminum seat?
Which instantly made the belt
looser.
3 inches longer.
Damn it.
So now you've lost that center belt. So the next time I landed that way, I didn't really have the center belt, and that's the only belt that pretty much holds you, or it holds the highest percentage by far when you land on your top.
Damn it, dude. That's important.
So that's important. So that is something that's changing a lot. Like Maxim cars, or that's sprint car, their cars are built that way. Other brands are as well. And then the chasm systems, the latest, I started doing it after when our cars land on the frame rails, just land straight down, the pressure of that just goes, it's just all into the driver's body, and the bodies just can't handle it. And we've learned that that's the biggest, to me, the easiest way to get hurt in a sprint car and can cause the most damage, in my opinion. So we run this system called a chasm. It has pucks that when the car hits that direction, it squishes into, you have different stiffness of pucks.
Where
and
are
the
these
seat
located?
Absorbs, the seat bar sits on top of the pucks, and then they're welded to the chassis. So that comes through Maxim as well, and through Chasm's the one who created the system, and I wouldn't race a sprint car without both of those systems these days. And that's, to me, I've crashed one time since where I landed on the rail and could not believe
the difference.
Yeah. And I look at it as more of like landing in a pillow compared to landing on on the cement.
Damn it.
Like a massive difference.
Yeah.
So that's been my the couple things that we've done to make our cars safer. There's still racing, and still, things can happen, but
sure,
that's where it's at.
When what's the state of sprint car racing?
I think it's pretty good. I like it. I like what, to me, from an owner standpoint, what High Limit Racing is doing. To me, they dug into it to help the owners and to make it more sustainable. From as many different directions that they can help in those areas. And I mean, money's always one of them, and payouts and things like that. But that's, there's a lot of other things that go along that can help. So I just really like what they're doing for the sport. So it's been nice to follow that series the last couple of years at a more of a full-time level. Yep. They're doing a nice job. They're working on that. Their shows are, their shows are fast, quick. Like try to, they're more time oriented. If you are watching on Flow, the times are closer to what you expect at 9:30. It's the main's gonna be, like some of the things that can just, they're just making it a little bit updating from where sprint car racing has been. And so I like that a lot. The competition, the drivers, teams, there's as many teams out there as I can remember, especially at a high level. It's tough, a lot of the shows. So I think sprint car racing's in a really good spot.
World Outlaw and High Limit. So how do do you see a world where they kind of consolidate, or do you think it's good that there's sort of two different competing series? Or think there's a way that they hold each other accountable and drive everything in the right direction? Because it might not be a bad thing that they coexist.
Yeah, and I don't think it's been a bad thing. I think when it first came out, people had their opinions and thoughts like, man, this could maybe be really bad.
Yes.
Or maybe this could be good. And I was unsure because I kind of felt like just need to see what happens in a way, because you never know what's going to happen, and a lot of what the fans are going to think, what the teams are going to think. Are you going to have enough members here or there? But to me, there'll be 40 outlaw cars running over there and 40 over here with high limits, and both put on great shows, and the fans, had a great night. So depending, wherever you're at. So I think both series seem to be doing really well. It's kind of pulled some of the competition. For example, Brad was winning all the outlaw championships there, Brad Sweet, and now he's, on the high limit. So they took one guy, the top guy from there, and, David Gravel won this last one, but Gravel's always been, to me, he's put the effort in, he's put the time in, and he's been right there in line, to win a championship. And, it was his turn, and he did that, and Brad won the high limit. So when they all race together, you never know, but they're still going to be up in the front.
Yeah.
So I think the competition's very similar on both sides. The racing's very similar. I like what High Limits is doing, though, for the owners and trying to, make the sport more sustainable as it goes.
Do you take ownership year by year, or do you have like a 5-year, 10-year vision? What is, how do you run your operation? So I asked that question. So like our late model stock program, typically we have a driver turnover once every 2 or 3 years out of our A car. And then we're trying to like groom some other guys through the second car. But it literally is like a year to year. We run a year, stop, figure out the sponsorship money, choose the driver lineup, and then fire off again, right?
Yeah.
And I have no idea where that thing's going to be in 3 years or 5. In terms of just owning a car, right, that goes out and races at the grassroots level. So, but your team, right, has operated successfully for a long, long time.
Yeah.
Do you have other?
So, the 9 car, the car I drive.
Yep.
That car is, you never know what it's going to be doing next.
Right.
Like it could be, we could cut back and barely do any. We could do as many as you want. As far as the 49, Brad Sweet, Napa's our partner there and have been for 8 years now, and it's they're a great partner. And it's
How
been
long
awesome
does Brad want to keep doing it?
And that's what it's completely up to.
Really?
As long as Brad is, I've always told Brad, as long as he wants to race at a high level, be in a sprint car, he's in that car.
Yeah.
And like Napa's is Brad's sponsor. Brad is a huge part of why Napa's with us and why we've been able to keep Napa with us for a long period of time is, because of Brad Sweet. So that's Napa and 49 Brad, like that car can go, as long as Brad wants. And if Napa was to move on, that's still Brad's car until he doesn't want to do this anymore. Yeah. So he's done enough for me and for KKR over the years that he deserves that, in my opinion. As far as the 9 goes, you just never know on that car.
Sure. What do you think about Brad in terms of being an owner in the high limit? What that means to the length of his driving career, right?
Yeah, I think he's probably looking at those things, and he has, he probably doesn't want to race a sprint car forever, but I know he still loves it, and you can see by his determination and his speed and things, he's still super into it. So it's tough to say how long he goes with that. I do know one thing with Brad is when he has a lot on his plate, to me, he's at his best. So I've never been worried. Busy. I've never been worried that he's, doing the high limits and also still wanting to, race the car. And he runs a track out in California, Chico, Silver Dollar Speedway. He has a lot on his plate. And I never worry about that affecting his performance at all, because those types of things never have.
Your first NASCAR related phone call was with Richard Childress.
Yeah.
You ended up going with Ford and working over there with, I think, Robert Yates and those guys and getting that pipeline. But when Richard called you, what were you doing?
I was at my grandma and grandpa's. They had a horse stable. They had Tennessee Walkers.
Yep.
And I was walking beside their barn, and my phone rang, and it was this number I'd never seen before, which was, what would it be up?
704?
No, 336.
336, yeah.
I think it was 336. And I answered and could not believe when he said it was Richard Childress. Could not believe that's who was calling me.
And so is there any coincidence that that's the car you're going to drive at Rockingham, or is that just
I think it's
happenstance?
I think it's pretty neat.
It is pretty neat.
Yeah, I was pretty excited that it all worked out that way.
How did you end up not going in that route and going the Ford route?
So I was racing for Steve Lewis in midgets, the white 9 midgets that are on TV back then, and we were doing really well, and that was all Ford was behind that. Ford Motor Company was behind that. So I had a first right of refusal contract with Ford to go to whether it was NASCAR, whether it was IndyCar. It was just a first right of refusal. So when Richard called me out of the blue. Right. And he flew me and my dad to Welcome, North Carolina. Mm-hmm. And we, visited with him and went around the whole shop, could not believe it.
And he was ready to hire you?
And when we left that day, he said, "You just tell Ford that you have an Xfinity car to drive, and they need to step up and get you an Xfinity car." That was basically what he said.
And so you went to Ford and did that.
So when I went to Ford and said, "Hey, and they said I wasn't ready, and I said, "Well, Richard says I am," and they said, "Okay," and then they dug into it, and then I had a 16 race deal with Robert Yates.
How did you enjoy running that deal with Robert Yates? That, I think, 98 car Channel Lock?
Yeah, it was all right. Yeah. I really liked Robert and really, and Doug.
What state was their Xfinity program in? It was like a limited.
So they just started because Ford made them.
They just come out of nowhere.
So this car just out of this little garage over here.
Yeah.
And it was, but they did put an effort in.
Yeah.
And I got, 14 or 16 races that year that were crucial to learning, because I hadn't been in a car. Yeah. I hadn't been in a stock car. And so it was a really good year. It was a learning year. Robert would show up.
Did you realize everybody was watching? Did you know that you were I remember people going, this kid's, coming out of that pipeline, that Jeff Gordon, Tony Stewart sort of pathway. And everybody's like, oh, Ford, Robert, you got a lot of, I remember there being a lot of fanfare and even I was like, wonder how he's going to do, you know? Were you aware?
I don't remember that year a whole lot. As far as people watching and stuff, I don't remember. I remember how difficult it was. Yeah. The things I remember about 2002 was showing up at Bristol and
I remember that.
Trying to get on track.
Fine speed.
How do I get out there?
Yeah.
The cars are going so fast. And how do I get out there and merge in and don't get wrecked as soon as I get to the next corner or moved up the track?
Yeah.
I mean, it was intense. And I could not, to this day, I could not believe how hard you could drive at that track on pavement, right?
Yeah.
To me, because I'd raced a midget on flatter quarter miles and things where you could be aggressive, but not at that level, not to where the car loads in the track that hard and you can just be that much throttle. So it was just very eye-opening. A lot of different situations that year were very eye-opening. And
throw them to the wolves.
Yeah, and just had to learn. And they were very good races, learning, that was a really good learning year.
How'd they get you out of the Ford deal?
So then at the end of that year, they moved me to Akins Motorsports the following year, which was Great Clips, Akins Motorsports, Doug Stringer, and they had a team that had been racing. That was Mark Green had raced at that year or the year 2002. So they moved me over there. a team that was put together.
Yeah.
You know, really functioning and got in there, and we were just instantly up to speed and just it was actually really good. It got fun at that point.
So you're still a Ford at that point with that
still
team.
Ford.
Yeah. How did the Ford deal come to an end? How did that? I mean, was that when Ray stepped in and said, "Hey"?
So then, I'm still under that same contract. So then, about halfway through that year, 03, which was going, you know, pretty good. Mm-hmm. I think we finished like maybe 8th in points, and which was kind of the first full Xfinity season with a proper team. And I wouldn't say my team wasn't proper in 02 because I had really good guys. It was just thrown together last second.
Sure.
Like, this is a team that had been racing for a period of time and
had a foundation
and knew what they needed to do. So so about halfway through that year, Bill Elliott called me. And I'm like a huge fan of Bill Elliott.
Really?
Yeah, huge fan of Bill Elliott.
Yeah.
And the first stock car race I ever went to was in Evergreen Speedway in Washington. And Bill had the weekend off, and he showed up to race. It was probably like a Winston West, and Bill showed up to race that race. So me and my dad took me. I was probably 10 years old or something, and he took me to that race, and we were there, and it was all to see Bill Elliott. And so Bill called me that day, and I rented a building from Jerry Nadeau off Lugnut Lane and down Brawley School, and I was standing out in front of that building. We just rented the end of it and had our sprint car, you know, had some sprint cars and stuff there, and Bill Elliott called me. I answer the phone, can't believe it's Bill Elliott, you know, and start having a conversation, and he's basically telling me, like, we need to keep us quiet and stuff, but I'm out, like, I'm going to retire at the end of this year, and me and Ray want you to get in the 9. And I'm like,
and that 9's good.
That 9's really good.
Bill's had an awesome year.
Bill's flying.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I didn't know if I was ready.
Sure.
And that was my biggest concern. You know, do you think I'm ready? Like, I don't have a lot of experience yet in these types of cars. And Bill was like, I'll help you. You know, the short of it all, like, he said he was going to help and be part of that first year in 04 with me and Ray. So then basically I took that to Ford, had an opportunity for Cup. They said, you're definitely not ready for Cup. And I'm thinking to myself, like, yeah, I kind of agree with you, but these guys are saying I am ready. So went with it, and they never had an offer for that, you know. So I ended up in the 9.
Match, you could leave.
Yeah.
Did Bill help you?
Like, so then Bill was there.
He was there.
And
he was there.
We'd go to Pocono, and Bill's test, because we got to test back then. So that was, we go to Pocono, Bill's in the infield in a car. He's over in turn 1, and he's in a tunnel turn. Go to Sonoma. We're out there together driving Dodge Vipers.
Yes.
And then, a week later, I'm testing the Cup car there, I think. And then, so Bill was at everything.
Damn.
And he helped me that whole first year.
How did you?
Just like he said he was going to, and it was awesome.
How did you adjust to the East Coast growing up in Washington?
I've actually always really liked it.
Yeah. Was there any difference? Was no culture shock or nothing?
I mean, Seattle or Washington, like, is a different part of the country for sure. But not a. I just kind of felt like it always fit me pretty well.
Yeah.
Being out here, and I've never went back. I mean, I go back to visit. Once a year is about it.
Yeah. Who all's still there?
Parents, brother, cousins.
Your brother's back here?
No, Washington.
Yeah, your brother?
He's in Washington.
Really? Because he was here for a while.
He was here for a while. And
what's he doing out there?
Just he wanted to go back home
with friends,
and he has a seal coating company.
Sweet.
So
yeah.
Yeah.
He used to come around all the time. He was always with you.
He's still the exact same. He works, seal coatings.
I'm kind of surprised he went back.
I was too, but now I'm actually not at all.
Yeah.
I think it fits him really well, and he's happy to be there with his family. And
he kind of seemed like he struggled to kind of find his base here.
Yeah, he was.
He's a bit wild.
He's a bit wild. He hung out with some wild guys.
Yeah.
They all
Yeah.
They had their.
Yeah.
They did it all together.
Do you remember
the good times?
I'll tell you this. The funniest thing I ever seen between you and your brother was when we got the Budweiser deal. You got the Bud deal. I was leaving Bud.
Okay.
But we both still had an appearance to do. I had one final appearance, and you kind of had one of your first appearances with them, and that was at the Buffalo Chip. And they had us in these campers that we were all staying in.
Oh, it's Sturgis?
Yeah. They had us in these campers, and you.
So he wasn't there. That.
Who was it? You had some buddies there.
That was my buddies from Enumclaw.
Well, I know y'all were trying to turn that damn camper over. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
You were in a camper, fifth wheel. I'm standing there, and out of the corner of my eye, I'm watching this fifth wheel literally about to turn over, and it's rocking back and forth. And we bang on the door, and y'all were in there running back and forth from side to side trying to tilt the thing over. Do you remember that?
I do, yeah.
Oh, my God. You came very close to flipping over a fifth wheel camper from the inside.
Yeah, that'd be hard to do.
Yeah, it was. I was pretty surprised that you got as close as you did. I think if we hadn't stopped you, you'd have done it. You'd have got it.
I'm glad you guys stopped us.
I am too.
That was good.
We had some fun. I was always, that we're talking about you kind of getting into Ray's deal. I was glad you got the Bud deal. The Bud deal I couldn't do what I wanted to do with the Bud deal, and it kind of had come to an end. And but you kind of wanted to make sure it goes into another place that you like. And I was like, oh, this is perfect. Kasey's, you were younger than me, and you kind of could take them. You could kind of connect them to a younger demographic and kind of take them on a new route or a new trip. And one of the funniest things. So one of the funniest things I think was some of the commercials that they made with you, and those just started popping back up because when you started talking about going and running this car at Rockingham, NASCAR Chasm and a couple other people doing some fun stuff on social media, the video with the girls, the ladies that are like,
so that was Allstate.
Yes.
Insurance.
Did you have fun doing that stuff? And when that stuff pops up these days, do your kids? Or
they don't even see it.
They have no clue. Right?
Tanner hasn't seen any of that stuff yet. But so back then, I didn't enjoy any of that stuff.
You didn't enjoy it?
No, because I didn't know what I was doing.
You didn't like the attention.
I was nervous.
You were nervous.
I was nervous. I didn't know what I was doing.
Why were you always nervous?
The attention,
You didn't like the attention.
like the attention. Mm-mm. So all those things were a lot. Like for me, I see that stuff today. I love it today. I think it was all.
Now you're glad you did it.
Yes.
What about you did that magazine shoot, fitness or what was it? You were.
Yeah, there's a couple different magazines.
Couple different ones. Like you were in some pretty damn good shape.
Yeah,
remember when you got the 6-pack and all that?
Yeah, and I think that was for maybe ESPN.
That was ridiculous. You and Jimmy and everybody getting all in shape, man, and they were on my ass all the time because they're like, "Can you go out there and beat them in a 100-yard dash?" I'm like, "No." They're like, "Why not? Why ain't you working out?" I'm like,
but then you got in shape too.
I kind of did, yeah. We rode bikes together.
We all were good. Yeah.
Yeah, that was fun. Riding bikes. Do you still ride?
I thought so. Not on the roads.
Not anymore?
Yeah. No. I still ride. I ride a Peloton pretty often.
Do you? Yeah.
And I have an assault bike that I probably ride more than the...
What is an assault bike?
So it's like the arms. So you pull the arms and the legs at the same time.
He's got machine guns on. What are you doing out there?
No. So it's I think like they use it a lot. Maybe wrestlers, things like that. So I like that because I can get a lot done in a shorter period of time. And
would it be fair to say that you've always been shy?
I'd say probably, yeah.
Yeah. What is that? Why don't you look.
So I wouldn't say I'm shy anymore.
No,
I would say I was always
back then
pretty shy back then, and just
right when the peak of your stardom, right, as a NASCAR driver, you were totally uncomfortable.
It's uncomfortable
with it.
So that was So I don't know why, if it was shy or just uncomfortable or if that's the same thing, but it made a lot of those, when I got in the car on, Friday morning or Thursday sometimes, like that, I was so happy, because back then we were doing, there was times I would do appearances kind of all week,
Yeah.
and a test and some appearances, and then in the car, and like it was a different time back then as far as everything going on around you and all the partners we had. Leavine Motorsports had a ton of partners, and I was fine with all of that, but it was just a lot for me. It was a lot for me to, just because it just wasn't normal, you know, like all the people and doing things that were uncomfortable, like on TV.
Yeah.
And we did a few different commercials, and I actually, you know, I'm glad we did that. And I look at some of those things today, and I'm like, man, I wish I would have enjoyed some of that stuff more, because if I would have enjoyed it more, you know, you could have done a better job at it as well. But instead, I was like, what? You know, this is a lot. So it was just always kind of hard on me. Was
it because of your how you grew up and what you were exposed to, and it was just such a absolute contrast to how life had been for you up until you started to have, you know, some success? I think so, but you know, like growing up, I was the kid that basically, I had friends that were very outgoing and like wanting to do a lot of stuff, and I was the kid that like their parents wanted. We want you to hang out with Kasey because we know you're gonna be like, he's, you know, things are gonna be calmer. Like we're not gonna be doing too wild things, stuff like that. Yeah. And then once we went on our way, like I could go to their level, but it was so yeah, I was just kind of under the radar a lot, I would say, you know, growing up. Yeah. Well, I've always thought that you had this you know, kind of a unique personality, and you did seem to always struggle with, you know, kind of the off-track demands and spotlight, if you will. Yeah, I'd say the spotlight. I didn't love it. I mean, it's not comfortable. Yeah. It's not normal, and sometimes, like, you would be, I guess, some of the worst situations, and I saw you in these sometimes, and I found myself in them as well, is when you're an unwilling participant to something. Like, you're like, I don't even want to. You know, there were a couple times when we get thrown up on the stage, right? Yeah. And we're getting, you know, we're taking questions from an MC, and there was one time where we won't name any names. There's a particular time we were in Vegas for the playoffs, and all the playoff drivers are on stage, and the MC went a little hard at you, and I think it was me and Clint and a couple other guys were like, "Hey, bud, you know, lay off." And I remember that. Yeah, and it was those were the times when you're like, you just never knew when that was coming. And I knew that if there's anybody that's not happy right now, it's Kasey, because he don't like this shit. But and I was always on edge too, because you never knew it was coming your way. Yeah. You know, you'd be in some of these situations where you're not in control. And that's why I look back at stuff like that, and today I'm like, man, it just wasn't that bad. Yeah. You know, I felt like it was at the time, for nerves or whatever it may have been. But it wasn't that bad, and if I would have just had a little different mindset, that would have never happened. That guy would have never messed with me, because I wouldn't have been the guy to mess with. Yeah. You know, like I would have been enjoying it with you guys and laughing or whatever was going on. And so it's just a different, you know, like I kind of put myself in some of those places because of just who I was, I guess. Do you think that do you think that's the great thing about this is going to sound bad, but the great thing about retiring, I think, is one of those. So when I retired, certainly there were a lot of things I was going to miss, but there was also some things I wasn't going to miss. And like kind of that being able to step away and not have to be in that spotlight anymore was kind of nice, refreshing. Yeah. Right. And now you can go to this other thing, sprint cars for you, grassroots racing for me, where your spotlight's not too hot, and it's never going to be. You're never going to be asked to do anything you don't want to do. Yeah. And even when I started doing that, I was like, I'm not doing any interviews. Like I'm just that was my first year away from the NASCAR stuff. Like I wanted nothing to do with an interview. Yeah. And I could control that because I was driving my own car, doing my own thing, paying for it out of my own pocket, you know, at times, a majority of it. So, I was able to do it that way. And today it's not like that at all. Today, like I was pumped to do interviews at Rockingham. Like that was enjoyable to see some of those,
just get asked different questions about whether it was racing or things I've been doing the last period of time. So I just feel like you change as time goes on, and look at things a little differently. And I definitely am fine with trying to enjoy life and enjoy interviews, enjoy whatever it is these days. It's like it's not that bad.
Well, I think you're in a really good spot. You got 2 incredible children. You're in an amazing relationship. You're in good health. You're for a 44-year-old, you're in very good health, and you got a lot of years of activity and really kind of to be able to chart your own path. I want to tell you, man, you got named one of NASCAR's 75 greatest drivers in 2023. That had to have been a pretty incredible feeling to be put on that list.
It was.
Yep.
Still is. Very, just a huge honor. And when Mike Helton called me, I just could not believe it. I knew some of that stuff was going on at the time.
Yep.
And then he called, and I still didn't have a clue why he's calling me, because I wasn't thinking 75 like for myself. So it was a very big surprise, and just to go to Darlington, and I actually sat by you for one of the deals we did, and it was neat to be part of that and see all the fans that were excited for all 75 of the drivers, and whether it's the accomplishments or what we've been part of in the sport, like what we've put into it and been given during that period of time was I feel like some of the best years of my life for sure were a lot of those years racing in NASCAR, and I love it.
Well, thanks for coming today and giving us some time. I've missed you. It's been a long time since we ever got to sit down and really kind of chew the fat, if you will. And you're one of the good guys. I've always had a really, really good relationship with you. Never once in all the years I've been around you, especially when we were teammates, were you not gracious with your time. If I ever had a question or thought there was something you could tell me that might help what I'm doing, or leaning on you and what you guys were successful with, you're always an open book and transparent. And like I said, man, you're in a good place to go on and enjoy the next 15 or so years before you feel like maybe it's time for me to start slowing down.
Yeah,
I'd get everything you could out of it. And I think people love seeing you race your dirt car. We'd love you to come run some pavement stuff from time to time. People, you'll know, you'll see this when you go to Rockingham, since it's been a while since you've been in a car in the top 3 series. You are going to be blown away by the reception and the welcome you will get, not only from the industry and folks that are employed in the industry, but also all the fans that are going to be a witness to that race, and the social media and all those things that you might see. You are going to really enjoy that, because people like myself miss you, want to know what you're doing, want to see you. You were a big fan favorite back in the day. You still are. And so it's awesome that we're going to get the chance to see you back out on the racetrack. And I hope you have fun with it. Hope it goes well, man. And thanks for giving us some time today.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate all of that. And I've already felt some of that, just of crazy, like more than I would have thought, and we just did a practice day. So yeah, it's pretty awesome feeling. Neat to have that feeling for sure.
Well, I think we all believe you got a lot left in the tank, man. So hopefully you'll get out there, get the results, and keep on doing it and have a few more good runs. And, yeah, we'll see you down the road. We'll have you come back after you get done with Rockingham. Have you come back and tell us about it.
Sounds good.
Kasey Kahne on the Dale Jr. Download. All right, so a great interview with Kasey Kahne. Andrew is our producer back there in the booth. Mm-hmm. Andrew. What'd you think about that?
I thought it was really fascinating. I mean, some of the stuff he was talking about, with the head injuries, like I had never heard his perspective on everything New Hampshire. Even the reason he stepped away and kind of disappeared for 6 years was all pretty interesting. I know people were wanting to hear that from Kasey.
Yeah, I didn't tell Kasey we were going to talk about that beforehand. I usually don't like to talk to a guest until he sit down. But I let him know after the show. I said, hey, man, if you get to going home and thinking about maybe you wanting to pull some stuff out, just let me know. I'll take it out. I don't want anything in there that he isn't want to be public knowledge, because I don't believe he's ever really acknowledged that particular interview, for example, from New Hampshire. If anybody in the industry that's been around a while watches that interview, they're immediately going to go, man, he don't look like he's doing well. He's obviously in having an issue, and so I was kind of glad that he brought that up, or that he acknowledged that moment, because I think it's not something he's said publicly ever, I don't believe. So
I don't think so.
And I'd forgotten about his crash in his dirt car a couple years back that he took some time away from, and now I do remember him talking about going to see Mickey, and I might have actually had a conversation with him or something about that. But you can't go to a better place. That's exactly where he needed to go, and I'm glad that he did that. Some people will go somewhere locally or see a neurologist in town, and it's just not that they are not qualified. It's just not as hands-on, and it's not as, I'm just telling you, if you get yourself into a situation, and particularly as an athlete in sports, Mickey and his team, they are going to be the people to go see. But otherwise, man, outside of that, a great conversation, man. We touched on a lot of stuff. I know I was jumping around. We kind of started off. We started off talking about some things that really weren't on my sheet. My sheet was kind of in an order that we attempted to go to. But then I was like, all right, I'm just going to go with whatever comes to the top of my mind. But I kind of like the conversation just to be a conversation. And it was fun. And it's really good to see him. I always enjoyed being around him. He was a great teammate. And outside of a teammate, we've stayed in contact. There's not many drivers that I text, even new or past, but he's one of them. He's one of the guys I've kind of stayed in contact with, and we ran into each other at the restaurant maybe a year ago, and it was Isla's birthday last April, and that's the last time I think I've seen him in person. But man, it's like, hey, you're just like, God dang, it's awesome to see you, man. It's been a while, so it's kind of he's one of them guys. And he's just as happy, too, to like run into somebody he knows and somebody he hadn't seen in a while. And he has a good head on his shoulders, man. Just a good dude. A lot of fun to get him back in here. It's been a while. Starting to revisit some of the guests that we were interviewing way back in that booth over there 5, 6, 7 years ago. And he's had a lot happen to him over the last couple of years, so it was good to catch up.
And just to add, I know you told Kasey after the interview, tying it back to the head injury stuff, but he came back, and now he's racing a 70 race schedule in sprint cars. So, like, for people out there who are going through that, like, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and you can come back from it, even if it doesn't feel like it. So, just for people to hear that, I think is really important. I will, if I can expand on that. So, the team at United Pittsburgh Medical Center, they see individuals like Kasey and myself that might get ourselves in trouble, and they can fix it in the moment. They also will see somebody whose injury was years ago, that they've struggled, right, to find the solution or figure out a way to get away from the symptoms or cure the symptoms, And some people, and I say that because there's people out there that are like, yep, I had that injury, and man, life's different, and this is the stuff I have to deal with. And this is just the way it is, and I've just had to learn to cope. And it's not necessarily always the case. I've seen people go to Mickey that have dealt with symptoms for years that they thought that's just going to be part of life, that he's been able to give them a better quality of life, and he's been able to fix those lingering long-term issues. And so it's pretty incredible. Anytime I think there's somebody with a concussion and concussion symptoms in sports, particularly motorsports, man, I have 100% confidence. Every time that I send somebody to Pittsburgh, I tell them he's going to fix it. Like, buy in, trust it 100%, do everything he tells you to do, be completely transparent, tell him everything you're feeling, thinking, tell him all the problems, get it all on the table, give him all the information to help him treat you, and he will fix it, no question. And that's
that's a great point that you bring up. Kasey went through a couple instances that were pretty serious, and now he's running 70 races a year for the last 3 years at 44 years old and completely comfortable and confident. And so that's what it's all about, because that Mickey will tell you, look, man, I'm not going to tell you got to quit because I feel like you're as in good a shape as the other guys out there and at no more risk to another injury than they are. So if you love it and want to do it, go do it. All right? And you manage your own personal risk. Do it every week. Do it once a month, whatever it is. But if you love it, go do it, and I can fix you. If you come back to me, I can fix you. And so that was what gave me the confidence to kind of continue running a race here and a race there. But it's wild to see a guy like Kasey at 44 years old like tackling a 70-race schedule. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Holy moly. But he loves it, He loves it. And so you got to appreciate that and respect it. So let's get to the white flag. The Teardown is going live today on Dirty Mo Media's YouTube channel at the Daytona 500 Media Day. They'll be chatting with the full field before the Daytona 500. This is must listen to podcasting and content from Dirty Mo Media. It's on their YouTube channel. They will see every driver today, and we'll be able to get the lowdown on just about every story going on in the sport heading into the Daytona 500. And then tomorrow, we'll team up with SiriusXM for 3 hours of live programming from the Hard Rock Bet Fan Zone stage in Daytona. All right, that's going to be on SiriusXM for 3 hours. It's live. If you're in Daytona, come down to the Fan Zone at the racetrack and see us. I'll be on stage at 3 o'clock till 4 p.m. for the Dale Jr. Download. Andrew Curlin's going to be there, Jeff Gluck, Jordan Bianchi. Those guys, I saw them over the last couple of days. They are pumped. Saw them at the Hall of Fame deal. They're like, man, we can't wait.
I can't wait either.
I can't either. I've never really sat down with those guys and done a show. And it'll be fun to talk about some of the stories going on in the sport and get their point of view because they obviously aren't shy about sharing their opinion.
Oh, absolutely.
From 4 o'clock to 4:30 when we're done, SiriusXM, NASCAR Radio, and Dirty Mo Live happens from Daytona with Denny Hamlin, Mike Bagley, Pete Pistone, and Daniel Trotta, Alex Weaver, and Andrew. You're going to stick around.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot going on from 3 to 4:30. Be there if you can. If not, tune in to SiriusXM Live. Also, all of this will be on all of our podcast channels where you already get this stuff. Dirty Mo Media is launching a new e-commerce merch line. So basically, we're going to be selling you some T-shirts. We've got awesome new Dale Jr. Download merch on the site, plus a lot more. And we'll be adding things throughout the year. As silly crap happens around here, we might want to make a T-shirt. Visit shop.dirtymomedia.com to check out all the new stuff. It's good-looking stuff, man. And I'm going to get me a rack. I'm going to put a lot of that on it, and I'm going to wear it during the shows, right?
Oh, yeah.
I think that's one thing we're missing in here is a wardrobe section.
Yeah. We've got 3 studios in this room, but we definitely need a wardrobe
I can wear my from home. I can wear my from home. But if you want to sell some of this Dirty Mo Media e-commerce merch, this is how we do it. I got to be wearing it during the show. So let's get us a little rack. Couple of large XL sweatshirts, some T-shirts.
Have some options.
Yeah, we'll just wear something different.
Yeah.
Every show. Do you know that Dale Earnhardt was absolutely 110,000% intentional with every single hat that he wore?
Really?
Yes, sir. They would come to him and say, hey, Dad would go to the souvenir haulers and say, what's not selling? Give me that hat. I'm wearing it this weekend.
Brilliant.
Yes. We got to have that kind of mentality, man. All right, Actions Detrimental is already out. If you hadn't heard Denny's take on, everything going on in the sport, and he's kind of previewed the field, talking about his competitors. You want to hear that, Actions Detrimental. And also keep an eye out for Herman Schrader and Speed Street coming out today. We've got a lot going on. It's, we're headed to Daytona. We're in Daytona.
It's here.
It's here. I mean, it just creeps up on you like Christmas.
Cars are on track.
Cars are on track. Hopefully, by the end of this day, or by the time you listen to this show, maybe we're qualified into the Daytona 500. If not, we'll see you in the duels. Y'all take it easy.